Sup everybody, this is Karak with ACG, and as always, it is my continuing mission to bring you reviews that aren't 2 minutes long or filled with sponsored bullcrap. Today, I'm taking a look at Human Fall Flat for the Nintendo Switch on December 7th for $14.99, and this is already out for the Xbox One, PC, and PS4. This is a title where you take strangely ashen-colored unibodies through various gray-boxed levels and try to bounce them through those levels using the game's physics and a tremendous amount of luck. All of this, of course, just so you can fall off the level and end up on the next one, which sounds like a good time, but I'm sure naming the unicorn the national animal of Scotland sounded like a good time at first too, until Witcher 3 came along and CSI crime scened all over it. As always, if you like the video, maybe subscribe. So here's my review for Humans Fall Flat. Sickly baby's first day out, hell is repetition, and what it looks like when Jello replaces bones. Graphics are up first. So on the Switch, this is running at 1080p 30 FPS, and Human Fall Flat isn't a looker, nor does it actually aim to be. In fact, it's like it saw colors and textures and grabbed its bags and hightailed it the other way. But for me, that's actually one of the good parts about the game. It's the aim for a specific artistic slant, and it's more dangerous than just trying to look fancy like some of the contemporaries like Grown Home have done. So many games go for glitz and glamour and lose a bit of that luster as you play them. And of course, Human Fall Flat does not have that worry, and it's an excellent treatise on sometimes not worrying about those things and instead offering one cohesive look. In this case, we'll call it unfinished chic. Now, gray untextured bodies swinging from wrecking balls into basically loose-looking structures, many of which break down into the requisite parts, works really well. And of course, it is the physics that matter here, as that's the game's style, and they work well with rock breaking or the shifting of a catapult as you toss your pal through a castle wall. Also, the game plays off that duality quite well with the airy bits. I mean, you're floating in castles, construction areas, and lakes are somehow floating in the sky, but then it shows them in this most basic and almost utilitarian way, and I dig that. It feels like you're really working through somebody's levels as they're constructing them. Now, much has been said about the top ramen-limbed main characters you are, and like them or hate them, once you figure their overall feel of movement, it's not unfunny to watch them sprint drunkenly through a construction zone, one arm awkwardly piped behind their back like they're in the middle of a Batman arm lock, and then left Batman behind but figured, you know what, he went to all that trouble, I'm just going to leave my arm like that anyway. Also, I gotta say, bravo to that walking animation. It is hilarious. It's like a kid got a hold of someone's absinthe on the top shelf, not the fake stuff, but the real stuff that makes you see world worms and universe lattices and gain super intelligence, which they obviously use to break out of their playpen to now wreak havoc on the game world. It's an acquired taste and look, and I get that, but for me, I really did like it, and on the Switch here, it has its place. And of course, that brings us to sound, music, and voice.
They will push every button they see.
You know what? Let's do sound first. Now, when it comes to the main character interactions, there are some good elements like the screeching of rock on rock when he's just pulling with all his might on this rock or boulder that's at least 2 times his size, to the crashing sound of your untextured unibody slamming into a mixture of grass and broken debris as they end up falling back to the level. What's there is good. What's better, though, to me, is the atmospheric, and not just the wind and the whistle of it through these strangely haunting, really, when you think about it, construction zones and questionably placed castles. But if you listen very closely, little things can be heard, like the sound of far-off birds flying through the clouds you're really close enough to probably reach out and touch. While there is not a ton of content there when it comes to sound, what is there I actually liked? The real issue is that through a lot of the game, nothing makes sounds except for impacts between the different world elements, which I get are actually tonally balanced within the puzzles. They're supposed to give you information, but come on. If your guy's on a hamster wheel burning away some of that gray flab from his parish midsection to lower a rock somewhere else, no sounds happen except for his footsteps that can be heard? Now, this leads to this auditory dullness quite quickly, about 8 to 10 minutes in, and the only thing you start to hear is your footsteps and the occasional wet sack of potatoes thrown against a wall sound when you slam back to earth because you missed a jump. What little is there is fine, and I did like the atmospheric bits, but I was really surprised and disappointed how little the world relayed back to me its presence in any kind of auditory form. Voice. Barely any. When you pick up small radios at the starting of the game, sitting around in different areas, a narrative explains the locations, actions needed, or at least gives you hints on them, and also tells you a little bit, even though it's archaic, about the human nature that's going along with the game. One of the problems is, like lots of front-loaded titles, this stuff starts to peter out quite quickly, resulting in the death of even the eclectic story bits in the first half, and it leaves you just trotting along, pushing forward by some kind of emotional momentum until the end. I don't think anyone was expecting Shakespeare. It isn't that kind of game, but there are hints at the start of more, and even after finishing it, that really actually never came to fruition. And of course, that brings us to music. What plays is pretty good, and while large sections, in fact, huge sections, are silent, as discussed in the sound as well, when the music does play, it's 1 second moody synth chords played across native instruments or some other eclectic moment. And just when you think it's been silent for just a little too long, the music ramps up as you find your way to the elevator to go to the next level. I especially liked one piano track that was refreshingly well written and really set the mood for a particular location. But overall, it's not extraordinary when it comes to these tracks. I liked a couple, some are hit and miss. Overall, I would say I just wish there was more. Gameplay. And of course, a bit about the story. There is no story. You're plopped down into a floating level like a video game gray box and given the goal to go to the elevator on the other side, which, like a Chinese escalator, just sort of sucks you down without remorse at the end. To do that, of course, you have to take your protagonist, this portly shaped gray untextured mass, through an ever-increasing in complexity series of levels as you learn the game's mechanics and physics to get you through those locations. Now, some are small and some are sprawling, requiring many different tactics just to get to the next space, which might be a large construction zone or past a castle or once you get to the boat. Well, the less said about the boat, the better, because seriously, it's like playing Monopoly and someone throws down a Dark Souls-inspired rules board and every move is just death. Seriously, it's that insane. Wait till you get to it. Now, before you jump in or even during the game, you can customize your characters with pants, a shirt, and a hat, but the rest of the game, he's untextured and just vaguely a creepy mess of lack of bone mass. As you progress through the levels, you will begin picking up the general ideas and processes that the game expects you to use to get past obstacles. Now, as we all know, games like this really do hinge on their control. Even if they appear out of control at all times, there has to be some expectation. Unfortunately, there are some issues in Human Go Splat. The controls are wonky on purpose, but a large complaint from many gamers who got the previous versions, nothing's really changed here as well, is the fact that it is so difficult sometimes to even adjust or assume what you're going to do. Like another title in the genre, Grown Home, where the body rack's one way and the hands and feet the other. For example, climbing. This requires not only camera work in two different directions, up and then down to pull yourself up, but at times you're also worrying about what button to press for how long, because if you hold it too long, you can kill the momentum of the climb, and that's the difference between getting onto the platform and getting turned into a dirt pancake as you fall to the level side. For example, a jump. Making a jump can involve looking up, pressing the grab button so your character puts his arms above his head like some kind of toddler at osh gosh bagosh who wants something on the highest shelf, and then pushing forward to run, then pushing the jump button, then looking down to get the view on the character to pull themselves up, then letting go at a particular moment to get onto the ledge. And of course, that wouldn't be half the problem if the camera wasn't so damned atrocious. It's some kind of helicopter parenting in camera form. Sometimes you have it as a safeguard and you can see what you're doing. Other times you're left to your own devices and find yourself staring at a wall with the camera jiggering around, not really sure if you've climbed higher or if you're performing the world's first gray box masturbation routine. And sadly, that camera's mixed with the way you grab stuff in this game, which is the right and left trigger. Basically, they have you grabbing onto whatever's in front, below, or above you, and that's generally expected to be at the height of what you're looking at. But when I say general, let's pretend I said random. And yes, it is going to mess up, and it's going to mess up hundreds of times. Reach down to get a stick, and instead, you're suddenly locked into a struggle to the death with the earth like Atlas trying to tear out a friggin' mountain. Because not only are the grab controls loose, but the character is not transparent, and so the times you won't be able to see exactly what your hands are doing are countless. It's been done before, but fair warning, when trying to drag a block around a swinging platform and knowing that a respawn means 4 additional climbs, a leap back to the spot you're at, it can actually get nerve-wracking, and I'm going to be honest, not in the best way. One way to possibly alleviate the pressure to do this is, of course, split-screen co-op. Now, that requires 2 Joy-Cons or Pro controllers or a mix of the two, but you can't obviously do handheld controls and then a Pro controller as well. And 2 people can jump in. There are no puzzles that absolutely require them, though. On the other hand, I really did like a lot of the puzzles. I do wish they were a little bit more dense in some locations, but I love the fact that sometimes there's 5, maybe 6 combined ways to get through an area. They are very basic, and I mean the difference between trying to, let's say, pick a lock with a piece of metal the size of a small child, or smashing a door with some rocks, or fidget-majigging onto a ledge and using momentum to barely flick you over a castle rampart. I wish those were a bit more detailed, but it was still fun to really try to figure them out. The real problem is my idea of this game really hasn't switched since the first time it came out. It's hard not to really consider this game much more for Twitch streamers than actual gamers, as the primary source is arguably much more fun to watch someone else's frustration of the controls just not working right than it is to experience them. A case many gamers lamented when Last Guardian Bat and the Cat kind of creature basically refused to do 80% of the crap that the gamers wanted to do and the frustration levels that were there. At $14.99 and about 4 to 5 hours long, it does offer some unique experiences that I think a lot of gamers could enjoy, and there's some multiplayer there if you want to jump in as well. But in the end, it really does feel much more enjoyable to watch someone else play this than to play it yourself. And of course, that brings us to fun factor. There's an almost paradoxical point in games, and once you've figured out just how tricky the movement is, you also have that momentum and memory on your side, but then you start fighting how it actually controls, and that happens a lot here. Listen, sometimes watching other people fail is funny, but there's a reason why controlling monkeys via RC remotes and having them try to hump a football isn't a sporting event, and that's pretty much what we have here. There are definitely elements that I really enjoy in this game, but it never quite gets to the excellence of some other titles in the genre. So as you guys know, I rate games on a buy, wait for sale, rent, or never touch it again rating scale. And even with the price helping it at $14.99, I still think it would be nice to get this on a sale. I think some gamers will still lament if they pay full price for this. In the end, it is a title out there that is a little bit more fun, at least to me, to watch rather than play. There's some elements to it that I really enjoyed, but overall, forgettable experience. So that's it for me. I hope you liked the video. If you did, give it a thumbs up. If you didn't, give it a thumbs down. Make sure to check out Twitter and Reddit and my Patreon. My Patreon is a place where you guys can continue to assist the channel to give reviews that aren't 2 minutes long or filled with sponsored bullcrap. And you'll get some cool swag. Maybe play some Dungeons and Dragons. Maybe play some DCU with me. And lastly, remember, you can always help the channel using the Amazon affiliates link in the description. Peace out and enjoy the rest of your week.